So, welcome to today's Lessons in Leadership. We have Patrick Ghali, the managing partner of Sussex Partners, a global institutional hedge fund advisory business. Patrick, it's great to have you on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, Patrick, let's get straight into it. I guess the first question we ask everybody on the show is really, how did you get to where you are today? How did you end up as the managing partner? And tell us a little bit about your career today.
Yeah, so I think I probably didn't have a traditional career path in a sense that I've always been independent. I went to the States for an exchange year, which turned out into sort of a 20-year hiatus. I ended up staying in the States and studying at New York University. And in my second or third year at NYU, got together with a bunch of other people and we started an internet business together. And got lucky enough to get funding from AOL and Lazard for that business. So had an entrepreneurial taste early on, then sort of spent most of my career working for myself, but for a brief stint at an investment bank, Bear Stearns, because I felt that never having worked for someone, it would be very interesting for me to go and work for a big organization. And realized within a very short period of time that it wasn't for me, and left within 6 months to start Sussex Partners with a friend of mine. And that was nearly 18 years ago. So not the typical career path in the sense that I didn't work for lots of institutions and then decided to become independent, but rather was sort of independent from the beginning and perhaps unemployable, I don't know. But here I am.
I've often heard entrepreneurs describe themselves as unemployable at times. During that career then, so you've been a tech entrepreneur, you've worked in banking, you're now a global institutional advisor. What have been some of the sort of big challenges you've faced in your career, and what are the sort of leadership lessons you learned through those challenges?
Yeah, look, I think the challenge is going from an idea to building a business. That's exciting, but that's also challenging because at the beginning you just have some crazy idea and then you hope that you can convince some other people. I mean, when we started Sussex Partners, no one needed another investment advisor. And, people would tell us that the banks are doing this and why should they entrust a small business when they can do business with the banks? And I think the challenge at the beginning is that you have to believe in your idea and not necessarily listen to people's advice and concerns, and just go with it if you believe that it's a good idea and trust your gut. Because it's counterintuitive. If you listen to everybody who will tell you how difficult it is, you will never get started. So I think that's important. But I think the other thing, being an entrepreneur, what you learn early on is to do everything yourself, or to be able to do everything yourself. So you start with putting together the desks in your first office. HR is something you have to deal with. The first spreadsheets, to put together your cash flow projections or invoicing or anything like that, most likely you will have built them at some point. And so I think what you learn early on is to lead from the front and to not ask people to do anything that you would not be willing to do yourself. And I think the nice thing is that you can actually point to having done most of the things yourself at some point, and you're able to do most of the things. Not necessarily better than other people, right? That's why I go out and hire people so that they can do a better job than you. But at least you know what it means to do the job, and I think that's really important. So I think there's no disconnect in that sense between the people that work for you and yourself, because at some point you will have been there, you will have done that. And I think it's really important that you don't ask people to do things that you yourself would feel uncomfortable doing or wouldn't be willing to do. And I think that's what you learn, sort of having built a business, is that you will have done all these tasks at some point, for better or worse. And I think that's a really good lesson. I always felt that if you can show your team that you can also do it and you're willing to do it, then it's much better than if you just ask them to do something which perhaps you would not want to do or wouldn't know how to do.
Absolutely, it's about leading from the front. And if you can do it yourself, then it's great that the team are there and can ask for support when they need it as well.
Yeah, it's about doing things together. If you start a business, then it's very much also about building loyalty. You are asking people to trust you with their future. And it's not clear at the beginning what that future will be. You have some aspirations and some hopes and some ideas. But unlike in a big organization, you don't have that institutional sort of guarantee to some degree, albeit there's plenty of big banks that have done business. But you're asking people for their trust and their loyalty, and you've got to repay that somehow. And you also feel, I think, a great responsibility to them to make sure that their dreams and their aspirations can be fulfilled if indeed they decide to trust you.
Which brings me kind of nicely into compassionate leadership as well, because some of the things you say there, people are putting their trust in you for their careers. How do you maintain compassionate leadership? And how do you communicate that to your team, especially when times are tough and maybe things aren't going as well as one would hope?
Well, look, I think there's a couple of things. You try and be a good employer. So COVID, I think, is a good example, right? I think the reaction that a lot of people had was, oh, let's shrink our workforce, let's batten down the hatches, and let's cut costs. My view was different. My view was, how can we protect everybody's jobs and make sure everybody's okay in this period, so that employees feel like you're looking out for them as well, and that they can rely on you. So loyalty, very, very important, and it's a two-way street. And I think the other thing not to forget is, work's not everything. Friends and family are really what's important, and different people have different motivators as to why they do things. Some people are motivated by money and by status and by moving up in an organization, wanting a sense of ownership. That can be very important. And other people, don't have those aspirations. They get to a level where they feel comfortable and they don't want to push themselves anymore, and you need to understand those limitations and employ them accordingly. I think it's also important that you understand what's happening in people's private lives to some degree, but it's also important that you don't cross that line. So I think it becomes dangerous when you become their friend, in a sense that, if you start getting involved in their personal lives too much, that can really muddy the waters, and I think make it also uncomfortable for them. So try and understand what's going on in their lives, try and have an understanding for that, and understand the motivators and the drivers and the things that might create problems in their personal lives, without overstepping that boundary where they feel uncomfortable and where you sort of become uncomfortable as well. And I think it's a delicate balance to get that right.
Absolutely. I think you just reminded me there of something one of my managers said to me, 20 odd years ago when I first got into the workforce. And he said to me, Paul, always remember that we're friendly, we're not friends.
Yeah. And look, there's nothing wrong with developing friendships over time, but it does make things more complicated. There's some people who've been working with me for 15 years, and there is a friendship for sure. But I do think there has to be this balance as well at some point, because otherwise it becomes very difficult if you're the one who has to take the ultimate decisions. You don't want people to be upset. And the other thing I think is important is to try and be balanced and understand other people's viewpoints. So one of the things that I like to do is, first of all, I try and understand what the other person might be thinking, where they're coming from. But also, I quite like asking people that I respect and that I think have good knowledge on a topic where maybe I'm not sure, just for a reality check, and sort of go through a hypothetical situation with them, or through a situation I'm facing, and just asking their view and saying, hey, am I getting this wrong? Am I looking at it from the wrong perspective? Am I making a mistake in my thinking? Should I be handling this differently? And oftentimes it's just about sort of having that sounding board and someone else just maybe give you another perspective. Often the decision remains the same, but I think it's quite important to have that and to be willing to question yourself, and to try and understand the other perspective as well.
Absolutely. I think that's something we as leaders sometimes forget, because we have to make so many decisions on a daily basis. You often forget to question why you're making those decisions. And I think that was probably one of the most interesting things that came out of my MBA studies, was really looking at things from a different angle and a different perspective, and have you considered all the different viewpoints? And in a lot of cases, yes, but I hadn't necessarily expressed them. And I found it a fascinating insight into myself as a leader to be able to then say, well, actually, have I thought about this? Have I thought about that? Have I thought about the impacts of this? And I think that experience probably made me a better, more well-rounded individual.
Yeah, and I think to have that balance, to always try and make sure that you're balanced in your approach and your views. It's very easy to just get stuck in your own views and your own strategy, and this is how we're going to do it. The buck stops with me. But I think it's important to make sure you really are, as I said, balanced, and you consider all aspects. And you may not agree with people, and that's fine, as long as you've considered it. But I think it's dangerous if you just power ahead. And it's really helpful to me to have just, friends and other industry resources that you can draw on and just say, hey, can you give me a reality check? Am I really thinking about this the right way? How would you react in this situation? And to not just ask one person, but to ask 2 or 3 people, especially people who are difficult and critical. And if they all agree, then you probably are on the right track.
Absolutely. I think in hindsight, some of the founder members of the European Super League would have probably wished they'd looked at things from a different perspective before making the announcement that they made a couple of weeks ago.
Probably, yeah.
Patrick, you mentioned 2 things there in that last answer, which are really interesting, and they're questions in their own right. One of them was about work-life balance and finding that balance, and the other was about COVID. So I'll speak to you first and foremost about work-life balance. So how do you ensure that you get that work-life balance, and so that, the entrepreneurial and the business doesn't take over the personal life, and that the personal life doesn't take over the work life?
Yeah, look, that's not easy, and you sort of learn with time. When I was at NYU, I used to commute every Sunday between New York and London, back and forth for 2 years, and that's not great. You don't sleep a lot. There's a lot of jet lag. You can do that in your early 20s. Now in my 40s, it gets tougher. Pre-COVID, I used to travel 180 days a year. I would be in Asia. I would be, in Europe, the US. Sort of once a month at least, I would have a long-haul flight with jet lag. And I think probably, even 10 years ago, it was quite expected that you just powered through meetings and you had a sleepless night and you did all night, and it was almost sort of a sign of a badge of honor. I just got off the plane and I'm doing 10 meetings and I'm so tough. I think today you sort of realize as you get older that that's not such a great idea. And so, if it's your own business, it's always difficult to separate work and life, and you cannot really do that because your work is your life in many ways, and that's okay. But I think there's a few things you can do. So exercise is very important. Even when you travel, make sure you land somewhere. The first thing you do is you go to the gym. Make sure you get 8 hours of sleep every night, pretty much religiously, because you cannot make proper decisions if you're tired. It just doesn't work. There's plenty of studies on that. So really, really important to stick to that. Pulling an all-nighter is not a good idea. You shouldn't do that. You should find a way not to have to do that. And then things like reading. I try and make sure I have time to read every day. And I try and read things which either disagree with my viewpoint or have nothing to do with business, where I'm just getting intellectually challenged in other ways. I think that's really important. And that gives you sort of some distance, and good diet, and like I said, exercise, 5 times a week, an hour or so, where you're just able to burn off those stress hormones and look after your body, because unless you're physically fit, you cannot be mentally fit. And I always tell my guys, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And if I get emails at 2 a.m. from someone, I'm actually quite upset, and I tell them, hey, please don't do that, because I need you for the long term. And if you keep burning midnight oil, you're going to burn out, and that does you no good, does me no good, does your family no good. So we need to figure out how we can change that if that happens, because I want people to be here 15 years later, not 5 months later, and then they're burned out.
No, and again, you make some really, really interesting points there, and I was just laughing around the travel, smiling to myself when you mentioned the travel schedule. Is I know that feeling, and pre-COVID traveled an awful lot myself as well. And one year I was in Sydney and I got off the plane, went to my hotel, checked in, and the next morning my business partner was knocking on my door at 8 a.m. In Sydney, telling me, "Come on, I've booked us an exciting day. Get your trainers, get your running kit." And he booked us onto the City to Surf 14K run. And so me, him, his wife, and the team, we went out and ran 14K and raised some money for charity, which was great. But he just didn't tell me I was doing it in advance.
Yeah, that's not, yeah. No, look, I mean, I think you can, so there's nothing wrong with hard work, and there's nothing wrong with doing 10 meetings in a day. There's nothing wrong with flying half around the world for a meeting if you need to do that. But you can still do it in a way, in my mind, where you can accommodate the other things as well. And it's about finding that balance, and especially when you're under a lot of pressure and you're traveling, you need to find a way to have an outlet. Otherwise, it's just not good. It's very unhealthy.
Absolutely. It's about finding what works for you. And there are always going to be times when you're in a leadership role where you're under pressure and you've got deadlines to meet and you've got to make things happen. But that shouldn't be all the time. You know, it should be the exception rather than the norm. And I think for me personally, I think it took a few years to work that out and stop operating in the red zone constantly.
Yeah, I think as you get older, you kind of get better at that.
Definitely. So you mentioned COVID as well in one of your previous answers, and you know it's obviously been tough for everybody and has had an impact on everybody's lives all around the world. How have you found sort of transitioning from a position where you're probably office based, most of your staff are probably office based, to a completely remote working environment? How did you find that transition, and what were some of the sort of challenges you and your business have faced along the way?
Yeah, so look, we're a somewhat small team, but we're very spread across the world. So we've got people in Switzerland, the UK, the US, Japan. And so a lot of us are not in the same place at the same time anyway. So I think for us, it wasn't that difficult to transition. What we've done is we make sure that we get together once a day on a Zoom call. And we just update each other as to what we're working on, and we make sure that we all know what the priorities are. Because the risk is that if you're not in one place, that someone ends up working on the wrong thing at the wrong time. And then you end up with frustration because deadlines aren't being met or people feel like they've wasted their time. But for us, it was actually not that difficult, given the fact that a lot of us were in different locations anyway.
And how did it impact some of your work that you did for your clients? And was that pretty straightforward as well, or are there any sort of special measures you had to take to serve your clients better?
Yeah, it's not so much special measures. I think the face-to-face contact is missing to some degree. So there's definitely some clients where I think it's much easier to make progress if you can go and see them face-to-face. And that's missing to some degree, for sure. On the flip side, we also picked up some business because people haven't been able to travel. And so I think, you end up getting a mandate because it's easier for them to do business with you than finding someone new that they don't know. So it can work both ways. But I think generally speaking, we prefer to be able to meet with our clients face to face once in a while. And that's definitely something that's missing. Look, Zoom's great. We've done a lot of calls. I think from a research standpoint, in some ways, we've been more productive, being able to speak to more managers than maybe we would otherwise. So the days seem to be packed with Zoom calls from morning to evening, sometimes too much. But that last step is missing, especially when it comes to things like due diligence, operational due diligence. We like to do an on-site visit, obviously not possible. So there's definitely a preference for managers that we've already known for a long time. And we sort of have to get a little bit creative with new managers that we wanted to invest with, because we're not able to go on site at the moment. Having people in different countries helps to some degree. So instead of having to send someone to the States, for example, we can use people who are based there whenever they're able to actually meet with people physically. but there's still some limitations. And so, yeah, we're looking forward to being able to travel again in some reasonable amount. I'm not sure we're going to go back to sort of the crazy travel schedule we previously had, but it'd be good to be able to meet again.
Yeah, I think if nothing else, COVID has taught us that we can do more via video than we thought possible. I think it won't eliminate travel entirely, because you build trust and relationships by being in front of somebody that you can't build virtually via video.
Absolutely.
But you can do a lot of the research and intelligence type work like we do in our industries remotely.
Yeah, but the last thing is that human touch, before you want to give someone a lot of money, it's always nice to look them in the eye, not just through a camera, but and to see if they pass the smell test in person.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's important.
How do you evaluate yourself as a leader, Patrick? What are the things you look for in yourself to make sure that you're performing well for your organization?
That's a good question. Look, I think when you see that people aren't following you, when you see that things are slipping, that's a problem. And then you have to ask yourself why that is. Are you not communicating your vision, your strategy properly enough, or people not believing in it? If they don't believe in it, is it because you haven't explained it properly? Or is it because there's a proper disagreement, or maybe there's not a match anymore? So that can happen, that you have team members who are very good in one thing, but you shift strategy and they're no longer suitable for that new outlook. So I think that's important. And I think the other thing that's important is that you keep challenging yourself. So try new things that perhaps you're uncomfortable with, push yourself to do that, set yourself new goals. And also in terms of the people that work for you, I think it's always important that you have people that can challenge you and that can make sure that you live up to your potential. So I think the worst thing is if you hire a bunch of people that just are yes men, that just agree with you the whole time, or that you feel are inferior in terms of their ability to perform than you are, because it makes you feel safe. So I always try and find, when I hire someone, I always say, I hope that in a few years' time, you're going to sit in my chair, because then I've done my job. And if you don't have that aspiration, you're probably the wrong person. So you want someone to give you a run for your money, and you want to feel challenged all the time. I think that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the most important facets of leadership is hiring great people who will challenge your thinking, and that probably means they'll end up replacing you, or you'll hire a team of people that could potentially replace you. And for some people, that's, for some leaders, they get very nervous doing that, because obviously they've got the agency effect and having to look after their own interests as well as the organizations.
I think that's probably different if you own a business versus if you're an employee somewhere. So if you're an employee, I get that your job's threatened, and especially if you've gotten to a certain point and you have a certain age, very difficult to try and disintermediate yourself. I think as an owner, it's slightly different, because that means you can move on to the next step.
No, absolutely. What would you say has been the biggest leadership crisis you've faced, and what was the situation, and how did you go about overcoming it?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, to be honest. I'm not sure that I can point to really a leadership crisis. I mean, as I alluded to before, sometimes what happens is that a team member is no longer suitable for the strategy. Businesses have to adapt over the years. We've been going for 18 years this year, so things change, markets change. Every crisis brings its own opportunity and challenges. And sometimes not everybody's able to come along on that journey with you. So that can be challenging. I think more than leadership challenges, I think, there's business challenges that we have to work through over the years. The different crises and how to change the business model, how to adapt the strategy. I think that was more of a challenge for us than sort of leadership challenges.
Okay. And who would you say you admire most as a leader, either professionally or as a historic figure, and why?
Yeah, I saw that question. I don't have a good answer for you. I don't think I have a person that I can point to, sort of who would you invite to dinner. Um, I think what I do admire is people who are able to be even-handed and balanced, who are able to be disciplined, but at the same time flexible in their thinking. So not rigid, but still steadfast in their convictions and their vision. I think that's the sort of leaders that I'm looking for, what I'm looking up to. And also people are able to tell you the truth. I think there's a lot of people that sugarcoat things when they talk to you, or they're happy to hide under a desk, or they avoid uncomfortable situations. And the people that I respect are the sort of people who are able to tell you straight what the situation is like without being offensive, but where you know where you stand and where you basically grown up in the room, an adult who gives you the story straight, and where you really understand where they're coming from and why they're doing what they're doing, and are unafraid of making sometimes painful decisions if those are the right things, if those are the right things for the organization and the greater good.
I think I've covered a lot of the stuff I wanted to speak to you about today, Patrick. I guess one final question I've got is there a question that I haven't asked you today that you would ask yourself if you were the interviewer?
I think, one question is, why do you want to be a leader? Why do you want to be in this position? Because it sounds like a great idea, but it also comes with a lot of challenges. And I think you really need to think about that. It's a bit like politicians to some degree. Why do you want to be a politician? Is it because you think, oh, it's great at the top, you can make all the decisions? Or is it because you actually have a vision for something and want to build a business, create a business that has some legacy, create a livelihood for the people? Do you want to do it purely because you think you're going to get a bigger paycheck? Or do you actually care for the people that work with you and want to also build something for them longer term? I think that's really important to try and understand what the motivation is. Because the danger is, and I think you see this a lot in financial services, that people want to be at the top because that's where the paychecks are the biggest, but they don't really care about their shareholders. They don't really care about their employees. They care about enriching themselves. And I think that's why we have a lot of problems today. And, ideally you want someone who's a leader who really thinks about the other people in the organization and takes into consideration the fact that they're loyal to you and what that means, and the fact that you have responsibility to them and their aspirations as well.
I think it comes back to that great question of why, understanding your why, understanding what drives you. Because I think anybody, if they really set their mind to it, can achieve what they want to achieve.
Yeah, probably.
But it's a case of why do you want to achieve it, and can you take the people with you? Because if you can sell that vision, then that's the thing that's really going to make you stand out. And that's the one thing we always say when, we get inundated with people telling us they want to be the next CEO or they want to be a partner. And the question we always ask them is, well, why do you want that? And a lot of times they just can't answer it.
Yeah, and not everybody probably enjoys having less structure and having to come up with that structure for other people. Some people actually thrive being not the leader of an organization, but rather maybe a step below. They're very good at that. And they may not want to take that responsibility. They may not want to have to worry about these things every day because it's very difficult to switch off. It's with you 24/7. You have a sense of responsibility, you have a sense of duty. And you can't just switch off. You can't just go away and say, no, it's my holiday, it's my weekend, I don't care what happens. You have to care. And if something happens, you have to deal with it and the buck stops with you. And that's not always great. That can be very, very stressful at times. And sometimes you think, actually, it would be much easier if I didn't need to worry about that. So I think it takes a certain personality that's also willing to, I wouldn't say suffer, but, put up with those things.
Absolutely. And an understanding partner. I know I had countless conversations with my wife, where I've had to take a call at a strange hour or get up in the middle of the night to take a call. And And she often says my epitaph on my gravestone will be just one more call.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing, to learn not to do that at night. Switch your phone off. That took a while as well to learn, because most things can wait until the morning.
Absolutely. Well, Patrick, thank you very much for your time today. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you.